Spore is a cute game that you can beat by eating fruits, singing with the other tribes, and in general by spreading peace throughout the entire galaxy. But today we're not doing any of that because we're gonna see if it's possible to beat Spore by using strategy and philosophy of the controversial political theorist Niccolo Machiavelli, famously known for The Prince. Machiavelli was very based on his core principle is the end justifies the means, meaning if mass genocide of other species will help us come to power, or if dropping nuclear bombs on our neighbors will ensure safety and stability of our state, then according to Machiavelli it's nothing more but a justified necessity and we shouldn't feel bad about it. But of course there are many more principles that I will explain at every new stage or when it's applicable. In Spore we start as a cell. Our goal here is simple, eat things and grow bigger. But we have a choice. We can either eat veggies and avoid other cells, or we can eat meat and eat other cells. Machiavelli is very straightforward about it, for how we live is so far removed from how we ought to live, that he who abandons what is done for what ought to be done will rather learn to bring about his own ruin than his preservation. Which basically means in an ideal world we would all eat veggies, but since there are cells that can and will eat us, living with expectations of this ideal world will only get us killed. So we gotta be realistic and eat all of them first. Some of the cells also drop parts that we can attach to our cells, so this nano-violence is completely justified because we increase our odds of survival. I upgrade my cell with 2 massive spikes, named Gloribicus III, and now we can survive even more efficiently. I died a couple of times, but that's exactly what Machiavelli warned us about. If we would be eating only veggies, then we would have no chances at all. Eventually we get bigger and better at surviving, and after attaching some parts to make myself faster, now we completely dominate the stage and are ready to evolve. Here we can create our first creature for the next stage, and Machiavelli says this: everyone sees what you appear to be. If you really know what you are. I decided to apply this principle literally, and since he was also a fan of deception like Sun Tzu, and maybe he was a fan of Sun Tzu himself, I don't know, he says, never attempt to win by force what can be won by deception. So I tried to create the most innocent looking creature I could come up with. I was heavily inspired by seals and penguins, so I think the resemblance is there. Right now we don't even have arms and we can't do much, so the idea is to pretend to be friendly while actually being the biggest asshole this world has ever known. Now we're at the creature stage. The goal is pretty much the same as in the cell stage. Eat things and avoid being eaten. But now that we are a little bit smarter, we can communicate with other creatures and make alliances. But Machiavelli warns us, mercenaries and auxiliaries are useless and dangerous. And if one holds his state based on these arms, he will stand neither firm nor safe. In peace one is robbed by them, and in war by the enemy. Even though it might seem like he's against allies, he's really not, he's just based and sees alliance more like a strategic move that should give you power, rather than an actual friendship or anything else. The promises made during a time of necessity are broken as soon as that necessity ceases to exist, which means we can make allies if we need to, but we can also get rid of them anytime we don't need them anymore. So naturally, as a weak and innocent creature, the first thing I try to do is to make an alliance with even more innocent looking creatures. I tried to sing them a song, but unfortunately they didn't like it, so I had to kill all of them and eat their corpses. Don't get it twisted, the end justifies the means. Machiavelli was so based, he literally says that you have to learn how to be a bad person. Hence it is necessary for a prince vision to hold his own, to know how to do wrong, and to make use of it or not according to necessity. I think so far we're following this principle very well. After killing these guys I had enough DNA to add my creature some arms, but funny enough they didn't really give me any advantage, so instead I went with horns that could kill our enemies faster. To compensate for the disability, I added these things that look like little hands, and I also made them look nonchalant since what we're doing shouldn't bother Gloribicus. Despite everything, Machiavelli does not suggest killing everybody, so I tried to ally with some other creatures, but they didn't like my song as well. Eventually I met some monkey who apparently read Machiavelli as well and attacked me on sight, but I managed to survive with 1 health. After some more justified cruelty we got arms, and now Gloribicus looks like an old pervert with alopecia. Nevertheless, a prince ought to inspire fear in such a way that if he does not win love, he avoids hatred. At this point no one wants to be our ally and the entire planet hates us. Maybe it's because of my looks, but to avoid this hatred there's only one way to address this problem, and it is to kill everyone who hates us. So quickly we were on a roll and Gloribicus' brain and strength were growing exponentially, until eventually he started to look like this. At this point there was no reason for our innocent disguise, so I went for a look that makes him look like the biggest asshole. Finally Gloribicus became so smart that he discovered fire, and then my game crashed, so I had to kill an entire planet all over again. again. Now we're at the tribal stage. I think by this point the goal is obvious. This stage opens up a lot of strategic possibilities. For example, we can make friends with other tribes and then attack another tribe together. I say that as if we're actually gonna do that. More than that, it turned out that all of the other tribes were literally me. At first I thought that when my game crashed it split my save file into different parallel universes and spawned multiple versions of Glorbicus throughout the entire game. But now that I think about it, it might have to do something with the fact that we have killed every other species on the planet. Machiavelli has probably never had to witness something like this in his life, but nonetheless he has advice that applies perfectly to our situation. The Romans, whenever they foresaw trouble, dealt with it all at once and never allowed it to develop in order to avoid a war, because they knew that war is not to be avoided but only deferred to the advantage of others. In our case the trouble is Glorbicus. We know from first-hand experience that talking to them is useless, and the more time we give them the stronger they're gonna get, so we have to act quick. After killing some random creatures and getting food, I built an axe hut where I could give my guys at least some weapons, and I quickly rushed to destroy the first tribe. You can also see monster Glorbicus. Honestly I have no idea how that happened. But we killed all of them and destroyed their hut. Our raid was successful and now their totem was ours. But now there were other tribes and 2 of them were Glorbicus. Naturally they were a priority to attack. So I buy babies for 10 food, build a bigger army and launch an attack on one of the tribes since there was no one protecting their hut. But the green tribe sneakily destroys my base and we lose. It's at that moment I realized how big of an asshole Machiavelli turned me into. I can't imagine what other creatures in the creature stage must have experienced. So I do everything all over again. Get food, spam babies, get weapons, attack first Glorbicus tribe. Instead of going for Glorbicus, I decided to destroy some other tribe because it was obviously the weakest link. But I just can't take a break because the moment I leave my base, these assholes instantly raid me. So I go back, we kill them, we dance to some Mexican banger to heal our wounds, make more babies, and go back to finish what we started. I could have of course attacked the Glorbicus tribe that we just killed, but Machiavelli suggests whoever conquers a free town and does not demolish it commits a great error and may expect to be ruined himself. So since we already started attacking this tribe, it only makes sense to completely destroy them, otherwise they'll just raid us in the future. After doing that, we also managed to quickly destroy a tribe that was nearby. We get another totem and our tribe looks even more majestic. Now all that's left to do is to kill these last 2 assholes. We also unlocked spears and without wasting any time I raid another tribe. Turns out we also have bombs that we can throw around, which looks pretty impressive, but I think it barely does anything. And as we get close to killing all of them, the Violet tribe decides to raid us, so we run back and defend our hut. You could argue that I broke the principle whoever conquers a free town and does not demolish it commits a great error and may expect to be ruined himself, but it was either destroying their hut or them destroying ours, so our retreat was necessary, and Machiavelli would also support this move because he was very pragmatic. Whoever desires constant success must change his conduct with the times, and Machiavelli is not wrong here because after defending our hut, I gathered an army and went to destroy the other tribe. There was a minor complication because Epic Snail Boy ate a couple of my glorbs, but we can always buy more babies. We destroyed the tribe, kill Epic Snail Boy and kill the last tribe. With the name Glorbicus, not surprisingly our warriors are lobotomized, so I had to micromanage every decision, but eventually we destroyed their hut and won. And now we're about to enter the civilization stage, but first we have to create our city hall. To make it more Machiavelli, we can follow his core principle about fear. It is much safer to be feared than loved, because love is preserved by the link of obligation, which owning to the baseness of man is broken at every opportunity for their advantage, but fear preserves you by dread of punishment which never fails. So I designed a city hall that I think inspires fear not only in our enemies but also in our own people. We got spikes everywhere and a tall tower to make it look like we can see every move of our people. For this one I was inspired by Kim Jong-un and his portraits in every house in North Korea, so I'm pretty sure he used the same strat. Our people demand nuclear bombs and weapons, so now we have to create a military vehicle. I applied the same principle about making people fear us. We got evil teeth going at the front, lots of guns, and of course it looks red because everybody knows that red is danger. The civilization stage adds another level of strategy where we have to capture spice resources, basically crude oil of this world, so the more the better. But it's complicated by the fact that other cities can also recapture it or even worse capture our city. For our city to be functional we also have to create a factory, living house and entertainment house. In our case, since we have to create something that inspires fear in our people, I didn't have to think much about the factory since work is already scary. So I simply created a most miserable looking building where our people will spend the majority of their time. For a living house I follow the same philosophy. It's ugly and also looks like a military object. And as for the entertainment house, at first I didn't want to create it since Machiavelli strictly suggests we should control people through fear rather than anything else. But my colonies refused to work, so I had to come up with something. I think a massive tower with searchlights that watches your every move fits perfectly in our plans. I called it regular vacation camp, and we're not gonna talk about what's happening inside. A prince ought to have no other aim or thought but war on its rules and discipline. I don't think Machiavelli could be any more correct in this situation. So now that we're done with all the setup, our only way to win this at this point is to conquer everything that is not ours by any means. By the way, you will not believe who's against us. Crimson Nation suggests that we should establish a trade route between our cities, so I instantly agree. But they don't know that we are following Machiavelli's principle: never attempt to win by force what can be won by deception. So shortly after I launch an attack on their city. Our alliance has lasted for about 5 minutes, which in retrospect is a record. Unfortunately it was captured by the Orange Nation, so we had to recapture it and make even more enemies, but at this point it's not that big of a deal. In a tribal stage we have learned that war is not to be avoided but only deferred to the advantage of others, so I don't waste any time on attack on Orange Nation. With some perseverance and time we captured both of their cities and unlocked boats and planes, so now we can reach these nations on the other islands. While building my cities I also follow the core principle about fear, and I don't make my people too happy, but just enough so they would not protest. And historically speaking it works, so another Machiavelli W. For the boat and the plane designs, I consistently went for something that would make our enemies shit themselves when they see us coming, and so I attacked only leftover nations with everything that I've got. At this point there was no way to get rid of us, we were like pancreatic cancer, and for last city I dropped a nuclear bomb on them just because I could. And now we are entering the space stage. Here we have to create our spaceship. Following the principle about fear, I think nothing is scarier than a massive and highly weaponized, evil-looking gravity-defying cube. Now we have to colonize planets, expand our influence, and play diplomacy with other empires. We also have a choice between doing all the hard work ourselves, like searching for good planets, setting up colonies and building cities, but let's be honest, that sounds like a lot of work. We can simply attack some other empire and capture their planets and colonies where all of the hard work is already done for us. And here's what Machiavelli says about this: spending the wealth of others does not lessen your reputation but adds to it. Only spending your own resources harms you. And that makes our path very clear about what our strategy will look like. And if anything, he says that this is actually a good way of doing things. Let the prince have the credit of conquering and holding his state. The means will always be considered honest, and he will be praised by everybody. So the first thing I do is I find some random colony and blast it with a laser. They decided not to surrender, so I obliterate them to death. Not the outcome I expected, but that gives us $50,000, so we're actually good. Since for now we're weak by space standards, I had to do some missions for my empire that did not involve conquering other planets or killing other empires. Not the most exciting thing, but remember, Machiavelli does not suggest to fight all the time, but rather adjust your strategy according to your needs. Whoever desires constant success must change his conduct with the times. We also made an empire of ducks angry at us, so now we were surrounded by enemies on a space map. That was not ideal because we were objectively weak, so we needed some strategic move. And a perfect opportunity arises when I find Wortgan Empire. For some reason they were actually happy to see me, so finally after billions of years of evolution, we found our first ally. But of course it was not an actual friendship, but rather a strategic move to buy our empire some time and get stronger. The promises made during a time of necessity are broken as soon as that necessity ceases to exist, so we will attack them in future, but for now it's our great trading partner. Things were tough, not gonna lie, since we had two enemies that were attacking my colonies constantly, and we were also broke, which was a bigger issue. But eventually I found a couple of strategies that I abused. I found out that flying in circles makes you pretty much invincible. That allowed me to farm their ships for some money, and I also figured out that perseverance pays off. With my newly acquired shitty pulse laser, I could destroy turrets, go back to my planet, heal up, come back and destroy more turrets or capture their city. That strategy boosted our money making ability and also allowed us to expand by capturing planets of our enemies, so things were starting to look good. As you can see, our ally is actually busted, they keep expanding so all this green is their systems. But they were also valuable to us. For example, here they gave me $400,000 for destroying two colonies of our mutual enemy. I invested this money into better pulse laser, and it was probably a turning point for my empire because it activated my latent autism, and for the next IRL hour or two, I was actively practicing Machiavelli's principle of whoever conquers a free town and does not demolish it commits a great error and may expect to be ruined himself. So I kept assaulting this planet by destroying some of the turrets and ships, flying back to my system to repair, and doing it all over again until I finally destroyed all of the turrets on the entire planet so I could safely blast their cities. While I was doing all that, I realized that trading spice between planets was actually more profitable than war. I got $1 million by simply selling pink spice to the Vortigan Empire. Now let's be honest here, after doing all that violence for billions of years, it's easy to think that Machiavelli is a psychopath who loves war and violence and does not see anything else. But that would be wrong. His real focus was on power, and power can be achieved through various means, and it just so happens that war is one of them. So if anything, he says that adaptability is a good trait to have. The man who acts always with caution and patience will come to grief when the times change and he does not change his conduct. For fortune is changeable, and as she changes, the man who does not change with her is ruined. But of course I finished what I started and captured this planet. Now that we had lots of money, I bought some upgrades and a mini bomb. It sounded cool, but it was actually garbage and I never used it. I completely destroyed one of the empires by blowing up the rest of their colonies, but the fact that Vortigan Empire was becoming bigger and bigger was not looking good. They were too strong, so for now I spent another Ira hour attacking another hostile empire until I captured their main planet. By now we didn't have any enemies and we could live peacefully, so instead of looking for new enemies, I spent that time making our colonies more profitable. Absolutely nothing interesting happened during that time, but now with constant supply of spice from various appropriated colonies, we were making millions and I bought a lot of expensive upgrades to increase our military power. I also found another weaker ally, but he was actually valuable for us since he had discounts on weapons, and because he is weak, of course there were no risks to our alliance. And after some time grinding, we were pretty much Elon Musk of this part of the galaxy, so I decided that it was time to attack the Vortigan Empire, because these motherfuckers were multiplying like bunnies. So I buy myself a couple of nuclear bombs, go to their main system, and drop it on their city out of nowhere. It's funny cause they didn't even care about the first bomb going off like that, they were still happy to see me. I guess they really thought of me as a friend, but as much as it hurts me, it had to be done to regain power and control. So I kept bombing their cities and killing all the innocent civilians with all the tools available to me until they surrendered their planet. And after that all we had to do is to blow up the rest of the random micro-colonies spread out around us, which was pretty easy to do but also boring. It's safe to say that at this point we became the strongest in the galaxy. Really there was only one empire that could pose any problems to us, and it was the Grox Empire that lives in the center of the galaxy. So that's where we're gonna go. After some more trading and a couple more billions generated, I bought all the necessary nuclear bombs and other things, traveled to a black hole and made a trip right to the center of the galaxy. These Grox fellas were everywhere, but I wanted to get the stuff of life from the very center of the galaxy, so we could use it against Grox and commit mass genocide by pressing just one button. So I fly to the center, meet Steve, he gives me stuff of life, and I start this massive genocide of galactic proportions by literally exploding their planet into pieces. And for the next hour I was just flying around and dropping nukes on them, or using the stuff of life to terraform their planets into livable ones, and that instantly kills them. It was fun for a while until I realized that now we're literally the most powerful empire in the entire galaxy. But we still didn't achieve what Machiavelli wanted from us. It didn't seem to me like my own people were afraid of me, so to fix it, I dropped a nuclear bomb on my own planet. Shout out my man Machiavelli.